Hi everyone, thank you all very much for taking the time out of your day to join our webinar today. My name is Rosie, I'm a part of the support team here at Creditor Watch, and I'll be your host for the webinar today, joined by Paul Mead, who is our PPSR specialist.
Hi everyone.
For those of you who are not familiar with Creditor Watch, we are a leading commercial credit bureau and technology company specializing in commercial credit risk solutions. We take enormous pride in taking care of our customers and enabling them with the best tools and solutions to simply get on with business and trade confidently. While we started off as a commercial credit bureau just 13 years ago, we've rapidly expanded our offering to help credit providers like yourselves better manage their credit risk throughout all stages of their customer relationships. Whether it be onboarding customers quickly, keeping up to date with the changing credit risk levels throughout the customer relationship, or maximizing your cash flow by automating collections, Creditor Watch software, data, and insight solutions helps businesses like you manage their credit risk in an efficient, structured way so you can protect and grow your business. Our focus is about securing your goods and/or assets properly so that you can recover them and minimize losses in the event that your customer becomes insolvent. A few housekeeping items for today. If you've got any questions, please do pop them in the question box. We'll try to answer them as we go along. Otherwise, we'll also try to address them at the end, or we will reply to you after the webinar. Paul is our PPSR specialist here at Creditor Watch. He spends his day working with our clients to perfect their PPS registrations process. I'll let Paul go ahead and introduce himself.
Thanks, Rosie. Thanks everyone for joining. As Rosie mentioned, I am the PPSR expert here at Creditor Watch. I'm excited to provide you all with some valuable information and insights today into not only the PPSR process, but our products here at Creditor Watch that can help you along the way with onboarding and registering your interests.
Great, thank you, Paul. So just before we jump in, I just want to make sure that we are talking at the right level of detail for our audience here today. Could you mind just spending a few seconds just to tell us whether or not you register on the PPSR, and if yes, how? I'll give everyone just a second to complete this now. Excellent. Thank you very much, everyone, for letting us know. So now just onto the first slide here. So Paul, with your many years of experience, you know how to simplify the process for businesses to register on the PPSR. Talk us through these steps.
Thanks, Rosie. Yes, when protecting your assets, there really are three key steps that will help you to have the confidence that you are protecting your assets, but also performing the process in an efficient way. Firstly, it's always important to make sure that you incorporate registering PPSRs into your existing onboarding process so it's not forgotten. It should be one of those routine steps that your credit team performs when they're finalising an application and finalising a new account into your systems. So not only can it be really simple to incorporate registering security interests into your onboarding process, but it's also vitally important to register when finalising an account when it's approved for a credit limit. This is important in terms of PPSR's regulations around timings of creating a registration, which we'll cover off later in the webinar itself. Second to that, it's always important to leverage efficiency tools to ensure and increase speed and accuracy. The registering of security interests, we all know it can be a time-consuming process, and being time-consuming can also be very easy to make mistakes and get it quite wrong when you're registering. If you're doing a large number of registrations at one time, it can be very simple to sort of click through and think you're doing the same thing with each registration, but it can be different and errors can be made with that. Conversely, if you're not registering all the time, if it's one of those processes that's done every now and again, it can be very easy to make mistakes if you're not comfortable with the process. And lastly, it's it's all about remembering to update and renew your registrations to keep them valid. Obviously, registering a new account when they come on board is vitally important, but a major part of the PPSR process is ensuring that over the lifetime of your client relationship, you're ensuring that those registrations are maintained and renewed as required. So unless your credit team are a very well-oiled machine, it's likely that your accounts team and the receivables team may have had a PPS registration in place when you first kicked off, but it has since potentially expired.
Great, thank you, Paul. So we know that errors can be detrimental and have flow-on effects. Could you elaborate on why PPS registrations can be invalid if the information is incorrect?
Yeah, absolutely. And obviously getting your registration detail is vitally important if you want to ensure that you've got your interests are protected in an insolvency event. Be it you're a supplier that supplies goods for retail outlets for sale, if you've providing equipment to your customers on hire or lease, or if you're a finance company that's providing funding or capital facilities to your clients. The registration process has a number of data fields that need to be input correctly in order to ensure that you've got a valid registration. And if you enter any of these incorrectly, it can be very easy or you will have an invalid registration. I think one of the other things to remember is that the act that sits behind the PPSR itself, so it sits behind the register, the PPSA, it's really very prescriptive. And we've seen plenty of case law in the past, in the recent past, that attests companies thinking that they have got all of their ducks in a row and the registration detail is correct, but there were in fact gaps or errors. And this just highlights the need to really get that registration detail correct. And I guess when you're setting up your PPSR process in the first instance, making sure that process is correct all the way down the line.
Right.
In addition to that, it's really important to make sure that you get that accurate data correct each time. I don't want to go into too much detail here, given we've only got half an hour or so. I can go on for hours, but there are some data fields and inputs that you need to make sure you get correct each time. So selecting the right collateral class, describing the goods or collateral you're providing correctly. So we kind of call it the Goldilocks rule. You don't want to be too detailed, but you don't want to be too broad so that you potentially miss out in an insolvency event. If you're dealing with serialized assets, you make sure you get the right serial number depending on the vehicle that it is. If you've got a PIMSI, making sure you select PIMSI and get that right. As well is the collateral inventory, so you're providing it to someone to on-sell. Do you want to be able to claim proceeds of sale? So if you've got fast-moving consumer goods, they obviously turn over quite quickly. You want to make sure that you're claiming proceeds on those. And of course, how long do you actually want to register for? So do you think your client relationship will be 7 years, 25 years, or an indefinite time frame as well? So all of those things are really important. And if you do get any of those wrong, it will mean that your registration will be invalid and you'll be an unsecured creditor. And if you've ever had any experience as an unsecured creditor, you won't get anything back in an insolvency event. Having said all that, it's really important at the outset that your security agreement is correct. So the security agreement is essentially the wording that allows you to create a PPS registration, and it's usually contained in your credit application. So whatever's in your security agreement reflects in your registration, and you need to make sure that that's up to date and accurate. So if you think potentially that your security agreement hasn't been updated for a while, or if you're not sure if it's still valid, that is something that the Creditor Watch can help with as well. So we'll include some contact information at the end of the webinar, but it's vitally important that is your first step when registering.
Great, thank you, Paul. So when you have so many new customers and things to do, things do get missed. You've mentioned that including PPS registrations into your onboarding process is one way to ensure that this is an important step that does not get missed. A little sneak peek for everyone in this webinar, particularly those who do use our online applications and automated decisioning tool Apply Easy. You'll be able to do this as a part of the same onboarding workflow very soon. Paul, could you please show us what this looks like?
Yeah, absolutely, I'd be happy to. So for our clients that are using Apply Easy, our new iteration of Apply Easy, you'd probably recognise the inbox here. So when you've actually received an application and you've done all of your due diligence, you're happy with the process itself and you want to proceed, what you'll be doing is clicking on the update status option, and that will take you through to the details here on the registration. So you'll be able to view the application, you'll be able to see a credit report on that entity. If you already have a PPS registration in place against that entity, you'll be able to see that detail here as well. And if I jump forward one step, when you actually go in to update the status of the application itself, if you choose to click approve, you'll see that the options come in down below as to how you want to finalise that account. So you've got your requested credit limit, what you're actually going to approve it for. If you want to assign the account ID at this point in time, you can assign your account ID. If you want to edit the approval email that's sent to the customer, you can do so at this point in time. And then the last step is, do you want to create a PPSR registration? So what we've decided is to automate it so that it'll automatically click to yes. So each time you're approving an application, you'll have that registration status there. And what that will do is bring up the PPSR registration screen for you. So you'll have the template that you wish to register with, and that's obviously pre-completed with Creditor Watch here. You'll be able to see the additional details of that template. So whether it's subordinate to another registration, whether it's PIMSI, whether it's the collateral is inventory and you're claiming proceeds. So then all of that detail will be pre-completed. Then if you want to change your collateral description as opposed to something that's already in the template, you can do so. At this point in time, you can enter in your unique GONI if you do so with your registration status. And then last of all, the last step in the registration process will be to actually determine who you're registering against. So the great thing with Apply Easy is it will automatically pick up who you're registering against based on the applicant's details. And we can see here Creditor Watch is applied for an account. We've picked up the relevant identifier for Creditor Watch. So in this case, Creditor Watch is a company. So we'll pick up the ACN. And then down the bottom of the page here, the last step for you will be to click Register PPSR. Once that's done, you'll be returned back to the inbox. As you can see here, there will be a pop-up banner across the top of the screen confirming that your registration has successfully been entered into PPSR. So all in all, it's quite a straightforward process and really makes it streamlined for you. So I guess with the update to Apply Easy and having it incorporated as part of having PPSR incorporated into the approval process, really just highlights that it's so important to include it as part of that existing process to ensure it doesn't get missed, and it won't get missed, as we've said. Really, the PPSR itself can protect you in multiple ways. So if you're providing tangible goods and are funding all of part of the purchase price, it'll ensure that you've got top priority in an insolvency event. The PPSR itself can also protect you if one of your customers potentially trying to sell their business as well. So basically, whenever you're selling a business, if you want to ensure, or the purchaser will want to ensure that they've got a clean PPSR sheet. So all of that detail ensures that the business won't be sold before you're paid out. And also, and some of you may have been aware of this around the unfair preference claims. So if you've taken part payment from a customer in the 6 months leading up to insolvency, you potentially can be subject to an unfair preference claim as well. I think the other thing with the PPSR is it does show you that if you do a search, it will show you if potentially a supplier is supplier shopping. So you get all of that information by doing the search and seeing who the secured creditors are. Jumping back to the actual Apply Easy process itself, though, it really is a process that can take you 3 clicks to register. So once you've done that approval, select that you want to register, confirm all those details, it's going to finalise the registration for you. And I think it highlights that with the PPSR and something that's missed by a lot of customers is that the PPSR has very specific timings on when you need to register. So I mentioned this at the top of the webinar, but if you're a supplier of goods that's classified as inventory and you are funding all part of the purchase price of those goods for your customer, you do need to register before the goods essentially even left your factory or your warehouse to ensure you get that top priority. So that's really important. For all of the other non-PIMSI registrations or non-inventory registrations, you've got up to 15 business days to register. So really by registering via Apply Easy, you take out that potential issue of missing out with the timeframes. It can mean if you don't register in that time, you've got a 6-month cooling off period before you finalise your registrations. I think the other key thing that Apply Easy helps with is making sure that you get the right identifier when you're registering against certain entities. So if you're registering against a company, we're always going to select ACN for you. If it's a trust or partnership, we'll capture ABN. And if it's a sole trader, you'll get to capture the individual's details, which you can obtain through the application process as well. So I guess one of the other things that I wanted to touch on just in relation to leveraging efficiency tools to increase your speed and accuracy with our Creditor Watch process. In addition to Apply Easy and registering via Creditor Watch, we do offer customers that are potentially new to PPSR to bulk register maybe their entire ledger or a portion of their ledger to speed up the process, and again increase the accuracy of registration, so it prevents errors. That also applies for renewals. So if you're coming across to Creditor Watch and you've previously used another provider and you know you've got registrations coming up for expiry, we can renew those on your behalf. And again, also if you haven't evaluated your PPS listings and you know there are some that are out of date, we can bulk discharge as well for you. So that bulk registration process can be very handy from an efficiency point of view. In addition to that, with Apply Easy, as you saw in the registration process there, we've got templates to help you not only speed up the registration process, but if you've got a large number of staff members that are actually creating registrations, you can ensure that the templated data that goes through and creates that registration is also going to be correct each and every time. So you don't have to worry about potentially not selecting a PIMSI and missing out on that priority as well. And then the last step, of course, is the data validation. So as you saw with Apply Easy, we're picking up whatever details have come through the application form itself, but even using the Creditor Watch platform, so registering from a credit report, we validate the data. You know you've got the right entity when you're actually registering at the outset as well. So really those 3 tools, I think they really speak to the ability to actually increase speed and accuracy when you're registering.
Great, thanks, Paul. Look, just while we're sort of within this section, we have just had a couple questions that I might just ask you from our audience. The first one is, can you register older accounts for PPSR?
You can. So there are certain exceptions, and it's worth noting and obviously getting legal advice on those. Generally, you can register old accounts. So if you've already supplied to customers in the past, if you've updated credit terms and you've just included that PPSR wording, you can certainly register over those. It is worth noting that in most cases, there's probably going to be a 6-month, what we call cooling off period or waiting period before the registration itself will be valid. So if you register today, it's worth noting that you actually won't be a secured creditor for 6 months, but definitely still worth registering in most cases.
Great. So just in regards to listing periods, we had another question as well, which was, if you list PPSR, say 14 days after account setup, is there a green period for 6 months?
So if it's a PIMSI and inventory registration, and you've registered the interest after the stock has actually gone to the customer, you're outside that PIMSI window. So potentially your PIMSI registration may not apply, or there'll be a 6-month waiting period before you're a secured creditor on that interest.
Okay, great. Lots of great questions coming through. I've got another one here, which is there a difference in costs between registering PPSR indefinitely or time limited, such as like 5 years, 7 years?
Yeah, there certainly is. And I guess it's what I could probably equate it to is taking out an insurance policy, or not so much insurance policy, but if you're renewing, say, your license with the government, you've usually got options to renew your license for, say, 5 years or 10 years. And there's different costs associated with that. So the government and in turn Creditor Watch does charge different pricing depending on the duration of the registration. So a 7-year registration, which is the minimum period that you can do, unless it's a consumer motor vehicle, the minimum period you can do is 7 years, and that is obviously the cheapest. 25 years is roughly 3 times the cost of a 7-year period. And then an indefinite registration, of course, is quite a significant jump in terms of cost. Depending on the nature of your business and depending on the customer relationships you have and whether they're large or you have a lot of turnover in customers or whether they stay with you for a long term, generally the agreed standard is that you'd register for 7 years because things can change in that 7-year period. ABNs can change. We've seen that the PPSR itself has actually had some amendments since it kicked off back in 2013. So it's worth noting that 7 years may be the best duration to actually register for, rather than going for the full 25 years or an indefinite period as well.
Great. And then just one last question while we're still within this section. This is quite an interesting one as well. So is it possible to do PPS registration for labour hire businesses? And they've sort of specified here, since there are no goods involved, but the service/human beings.
It's a really good question, and it's actually a bit of a tricky one. The PPSR, in terms of collateral classes, does have a large number of collateral classes that allow you to register different types of interests. Labour hire, you can register against the dollar component of what's owed to you for the labour hire business. But having said that, I'd always recommend that you get independent legal advice just to make sure that you obviously are protecting yourself as accurately and adequately as possible, but in turn you're aware of some of the pitfalls of registering as well.
Great. Well, thank you very much all for those questions. So we are a little bit conscious of time. We will have a sort of slight 10 minutes or so at the end of this to go through more questions. So please send them through. If there is anything that we do miss, just keep in mind, we'll also follow up with you afterwards. Alrighty, so just to go on to the next point here. So the PPS registration process doesn't just stop when you've created the PPS registration of your goods and or assets. You have to make sure that the information is up to date, as Paul has mentioned, so it stays relevant and you remain as a secured creditor. This is actually one of the biggest pitfalls when using the PPSR. It's very important to make sure that you leverage renewal reminders and you keep your registration information up to date to always ensure that it's still valid. If you do have a PPSR process within your business, it's important as well to make sure that you do have reminders to renew and update your registrations, that you have the correct and accurate information to make your registration, always making sure that you're registering the goods and or assets every time you're supplying to a customer, and always paying attention to reminder notifications when you already have an existing registration in place, just to avoid duplicates. Alrighty, so just before we finish up here, I would like to give everyone the opportunity just to let us know if you would like us to provide you with any further information or any assistance with the PPSR. We'll just pop up a poll here for you guys to answer. And give everyone a few minutes just to do this one. Alrighty, thank you everyone for answering that one. Thank you all very much for joining today. If you have indicated that you would like more information or assistance, we will be able to contact you within the next few days. I hope you all really found today's session quite valuable. We'll of course be sending out a copy of the webinar slides and recording for you. We've still got about 10 minutes or so. If you do have any other questions, I have actually got quite a few that have come through. So what I might do now, Paul, is I'll read off these ones, and any more that come through, I'll try to get to them. And like I said, if we miss any of them, we will get in contact with you and we can speak to you directly. So the first one that I have here is, if an ABN and ACN are registered together, will that make the claim invalid? Is the ACN only required?
So if it's a company that you're registering against, the primary identifier to use is the ACN. If you do include the ABN in the registration, to the best of my knowledge, it won't affect the validity of the registration itself. From an administrator's point of view, they're looking for that ACN to be identified, because when they're dealing with an insolvency, they will search based on the relevant identifier for the entity type. So they'll conduct a PPSR search on the ACN itself.
Great. Next question is, what is the difference between PPSR Logic and Apply Easy? They've also asked about subscription costs for small businesses.
Yeah, so PPSR Logic is our dedicated PPSR tool. So it's where the management of your registrations is dealt with. You can create and amend your templates. You can view expired registrations. You can actually create registrations from within the PPSR platform as well. It now sits within CreditorWatch. Apply Easy itself is our onboarding tool. So it allows you to provide your customers or potential customers with a link to jump on and really apply for an account with you, and it automates the credit application process for your customers. So I guess in a nutshell, Apply Easy is the onboarding tool to register to finalise an account or have an applicant apply for an account with us. PPSR or PPSR Logic is the dedicated PPSR management tool that sits within CreditorWatch.
Great, thank you, Paul. Next question I've got here is PPSR registered against per company or by project?
It's a really good question, and I mentioned in the webinar itself that the security agreement, so the wording that you have that is usually contained within a credit application, really dictates how you create registrations, but also dictates when you register. So in some instances, and with the majority of companies that are registering, it's usually you create the registration over the entity, and that is for a specific period of time, and it's set and forget. So it doesn't matter what different projects you're dealing with, you've registered over that ABN or ACN, so you're covered from that point of view. If, however, your security agreement dictates something different, it says you'll register for each project that you do, or if you're getting a new application for each project that you do, then you may have to register on each and every project. As I said, it comes down to what's in the security agreement and the wording of that.
Great. Next question, does CreditorWatch send alerts when registrations are expiring?
We do. So we're actually one of the only bureaus that sends out expiry notifications. So with Creditor Watch, if you've registered against an entity and that registration is coming up for expiry, 4 weeks out from the expiry date, we'll send our first notification to you and to all users of the PPSR platform itself. 3 weeks out, we'll send you a second notification, 2 weeks out, the third, and then the week before, we'll send that final notification to you. So hopefully, with 4 notices, you shouldn't miss out on that notification. Also, if you did jump into PPSR and view your registrations, the actual color coding of the registrations themselves will change. So again, 4 weeks out, when you've received that initial notification, if you jumped into the PPSR platform, you would see that the registration would be colored in green, and there'd be a little countdown timer next to it. 3 weeks out, it changes color to yellow. 2 weeks out, it stays yellow. And then 2 weeks out, right through to the date of expiry, it'll color coded red. So a very simple traffic light system to notify you that you need to jump in and take an action on that.
Alrighty, great. So look, everyone, thank you all very much for being here today. As I mentioned, if we've got any questions that are outstanding, we'll definitely reach out to you. And if you did tick that you want to be given more information or some assistance, we'll also contact you within the next few days. So thank you all again for joining us today, and we really hope to see you again in a future webinar. Thank you.
Thanks very much, everyone.